Okay, we have quorum.
Evening, Ben. Who?
Board members, I will be calling this meeting to order at 6:01 PM, Thursday, February 16th. Can we please have a pledge of allegiance, and Director Church, since you have a flag in your office, we'll ask you to lead us in the pledge.
Be happy to. Figure out how the best way to swing around here. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States.
of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Director Church, for your help on that. Now we'll move on to roll call.
Director Collin,
I'm here.
Director Gonzalez is absent. Director Lopez,
Present.
Director Sandoval,
Present.
Director Silva,
Present.
Director Antolon,
Present.
Alternate Vice President Church,
Present.
Vice President Jimenez,
Here,
All right, thank you. And I'm here as well. Next up, we're going to do our public meeting announcements. We do have translation services. Translation services in Spanish will be only available on Zoom by logging on. And we do have our meeting ID and passcode on the agenda. Moving on to, well, before we get to the next item on the agenda, I'd like to take a moment of silence to recognize Councilwoman from King City, Darlene Acosta, who was an alternate board director for this organization, has passed away, and so we'd like to have a moment of silence for her. Thank you, board members, for joining in this moment of silence and remembering Darlene. Moving on, we'll go on to the approval of our agenda.
there are no changes.
Okay, thank you. Would that require a vote to do the approval of the agenda?
Move approval.
Thank you. Can I get a second for that?
second Jimenez.
Okay, thank you. Or actually, I'll go to our legal counsel. Does that require a move and second to do the approval of the agenda?
It does, yes.
Okay. Would I be required to go to public comment for that?
No.
Okay. So it's been properly moved and seconded, with Director Sandoval being the mover, the one who made the motion. And who seconded that motion?
Director Jimenez.
Okay, thank you. So it's been properly moved and seconded, and we'll call for a roll call vote.
Director Collin,
Aye.
Director Lopez,
Aye.
Director Sandoval,
Aye.
Director Silva,
Aye.
Director Antolon,
Aye.
Alternate Vice President Church,
Aye.
President Jimenez,
Yes.
Erica, you got muted.
I'm sorry. The last one was President Rocha.
Yes, and my apologies. I have a little bit of technical difficulties going on, so I'm gonna, it seems like it's being a little bit of a delay, so my apologies for that. The next item on the agenda is our general manager comments. CAO. Thank you, Patrick.
Well, just a couple quick comments. Caesar and Brian may want to tell you a little more about this, but just to keep you informed, we are beginning the site improvement projects at the Holland Road Transfer Station, and that's going very well. The first week, we've already replaced the pad, which is the first step in that. So that project is starting to move forward as we plan for this spring. The other update is that we are, and I want to just give a personal thank you to Mandy Brooks and Elia Zavala for all the hard work they've been doing to help me out in preparing the request for proposals for procurement of a new franchise agreement for the 4 South Valley cities. So that's moving forward. And those of you from our 4 South Valley cities will be getting visits from the 3 of us over the next 2 or 3 weeks as we bring these forward to each of the city councils on behalf of the working group, and seek authorization to go ahead and release that RFP and get that out on the street and get that process started. So it's been a long time since anybody's actually done a procurement process for franchise services in our area, the last one being the county in 2010. So this will be an interesting process and an opportunity to see what types of operations and services can be provided and operated, and whether there are some other vendors out there that may work just as well for our community. So excited to see that go forward. It's a very heavy lift, obviously, but we're happy to do that. It's a great experience for everybody really to go through that process. So yeah, you'll see us all, and then I'll be doing a actual update presentation to the full board at the March meeting as well, once we get in front of the city councils. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. I'll open it up to board members if there are any questions or comments on the general manager's reports. Director Cullen, I saw your hand go up for a brief second. I don't know if that was intentional or not.
It was I was jumping ahead to director comments. I jumped the gun. I'm sorry.
Okay, so seeing no questions or comments on the general manager's reports, I'll move on to department manager comments.
All right, so I'll circle around on Patrick's comment here. Just a quick update on Holland Road. Board may remember we increased our CIP, our capital improvement budget for the Holland Road improvements last year in September, and that project did kick off last week. Staff did a great job. We expanded the tipping pad at the Holland Road transfer station. So that pad is approximately about 60 feet wide by about 100 feet in length. So we added a good chunk. I believe it was a 60 by 70 add-on that we did last weekend. So that's rocking and rolling, and we will move forward with the ClearSpan. I'll go ahead and start working with ClearSpan through our Sourcewell agreement and start soliciting a shelter to be put over that tipping area to kind of improve that facility for our customers, kind of shelter them from the rain and the sun a bit. So those improvements are ongoing, and the facility looks really good as of right now, but we'll continue to make those improvements for our South County customers. So just a quick update for the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other, I see Mandy.
Just a reminder that not this Saturday, but next Saturday, which is February 25th, we will be hosting a free composting workshop at our demonstration garden at our Sun Street location, which is right next to our office building, and that's from 10 to 11. So if you know anyone that's interested or you yourself would like to come, we provide free composting bins to any of those who come to the free composting workshop, and you can learn how to turn your food scraps into gold for your garden. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other department managers? Seeing none, we'll now move on to questions or comments by board members on department manager reports. And I see Director Sandoval's hand is up.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment Mandy mentioned the composting workshop, and in Salinas, Councilmember Osorio and I had a community meeting, and I was pleasantly surprised to see, I believe, Jana Falk, is that correct? Show up to our community meeting and also promote the composting and, offer a lot of great information, addressing some of the community concerns and just sharing that information. So I commend Mandy and Jana, am I pronouncing that correctly, for their work on the community outreach. Thank you.
All right, moving on to board director comments. Director Cohen, I see your hand is up.
Thank you. And I want to start by thanking President Rocha for doing that moment of silence for losing our council member, Darlene Acosta. And just wanted to add a couple of other comments. And she was an alternate director for me for many years. Losing her as a council member, she previously served on the Greenfield City Council. She served on so many boards, 4 Cities for Peace as an example, her work through Sun Street Centers. And I just hope that we collectively, as a Monterey County community, can keep her memory alive. Just a heart of gold, and anyone who crossed paths with her once knew her positivity, her extreme passion for youth in our region. Just a wonderful soul. She will be missed, but certainly not forgotten. So I just wanted to add those comments. And again, thank you, President Rocha, for opening the meeting with a moment of silence. And that is all for me. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Director Cohen. They're greatly appreciated. Director Lopez, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to tag on to Rob's comments, and haven't quite found the words yet. I was texting with Dee earlier this week, and she was still full of light, joking and dropping comments to me about a resolution we're putting together for her from the Board of Supervisors. And unfortunately, now that's going to have to happen with an adjourn in memory. She was an incredible woman who raised a beautiful family, and her legacy is her family. Beyond everything else, they've done so much in our community and continue to leave a positive impact. But she's going to be sorely missed. She really, as Rob said, put our kids first, and she led with her heart all the way to the end through her work at Sun Street Centers. And I can share that today, just in conversation with folks about the opioid crisis, it just kept hitting over and over, her loss, because some people talk the talk, Darlene walked the walk, and she did it putting love of country, love of community, love of family first. And so just want to share that there's a huge gaping hole in the South County family's heart. And thank you for taking that opening moment to share those thoughts, Mr. President.
Thank you, Director Lopez. Any other board members would like to comment right now? Is your opportunity. Seeing no other hands, we'll close that portion of our agenda and move on to public comments. This is now the opportunity to receive public comment from the audience on items which are not on the agenda. The public comment scheduled agenda items as the board considers them. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. For this opportunity to comment. It's my understanding there are no public comments received as of 4 p.m. today. And so now I'll open it up to people on Zoom or over the phone if they'd like to comment. Seeing none, we will close public comment and move on to consent agenda. Board members, if you've had a chance to look at the items on consent, now's the opportunity to pull any items for separate discussion or separate vote. And if there's not a request to do so, I'd ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda in one motion.
I'll move consent.
I'll second the motion then.
Thank you. It's been
Mr. President, before we vote on the motion, if we could open it to public comment to see if any member of the public wishes to comment on a consent agenda item.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We'll now open this up for public comment. If there are any members of the public that would like to comment on the consent agenda. Seeing none, it's been properly moved and seconded, and I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Director Collin,
Aye.
Director Lopez,
Aye.
Director Sandoval,
Aye.
Director Silva,
Aye.
Director Antoine,
Aye.
alternate Vice President Church,
Aye.
Vice President Jimenez,
Aye.
And I'll also vote yes. So thank you. We'll close that portion of our agenda, and we'll now move on to presentation. Our first presentation is an Atlas Organics update. We'll receive a report from Mandy Brooks.
Thank you, President Rocha. I'm actually just going to do a quick introduction because Atlas Organics, Eli Stillwell and Leslie Rogers, both with Atlas Organics, are here online with us. And so I don't know, Rosie, if you've been able to move them over. That would be helpful. Oh, thank you. You did. Perfect. Thank you. So just a quick background, because I know we have some new board members. Atlas Organics is our composting vendor or operator. They operate our composting facility at the Johnson Canyon landfill. They were awarded our contract back in July of last year. So we're coming up on almost a year. And so this is a nice time that we thought that they could come and give you an update on where we are with the big construction project that was going to happen at the facility. When we built the facility, we did so with I believe it was a $1.3 million grant from CalRecycle. But part of that funding didn't actually allow for us to do one continuous concrete pad, which is what we compost on, that has air pipes that run through it. We use a form of composting called aerated static pile. And so what we were able to do, which Brian can talk to you about in great depth as he was in the trenches digging the holes to make that pad happen, is that it has, the piping has native soil in between each of the sections. So it can make it a little bit difficult to operate on. And so when we negotiated the contract with Atlas Organics, part of the contract allowed for Atlas to come in and redo the pad. So it becomes one large continuous concrete pad, which can be very expensive. And then they're also going to be adding on a sorting line and AI robotic system to help with the sorting of the organic materials and removing of contaminants. So items that shouldn't be in the compost. So that's the primer, but I will hand it over to Eli. She is their #1 projects manager. Eli, if you want to take it over.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us, Mandy.
Of course.
Okay, so let's see if you want to go to the screen, slide 2. Mandy did a great introduction for Atlas, and I will just kind of give a little bit more of an overview of who we are. I know there are some new board members. So if you want to go to the next slide. So we are a developer and operator of compost facilities across the nation. We accept a wide range of feedstocks, including yard waste, food waste, and biosolids. We currently have 14 sites across the country, and we're very excited that Salinas Valley is our first partner in California. Next slide. So we specialize in public-private partnerships, such as the partnership we have with Salinas Valley. Other partnerships that we have are in place with the City of San Antonio, Indian River County, Florida, City of Memphis, Tennessee, Greenville, South Carolina, or Greenville County, South Carolina, City of Durham, North Carolina, and Lexington County, South Carolina. All right, next slide. So I have a few videos just to kind of give an example of different facilities that we do run. Durham is, our feedstocks in Durham are yard waste and biosolids. We also take a little bit of food waste, but nothing to the extent of other sites. We are co-located at a wastewater treatment plant and we converted this old shed that you see here. It was a biosolids drying shed, and we converted it into a processing area. All right, we can go to the next slide. This is our Indian River County, Florida facility. It is primarily green waste. It's co-located at a municipal landfill, and we're doing also small amounts of food waste here. All right. And then our next facility is San Antonio, Texas. San Antonio, Texas has a curbside organics program that was recently introduced in 2020. With this, there's been a large level of contamination. So I don't know why the video isn't playing, but this is a version of what we will be building in Salinas Valley. This is our first pre-sort processing line that includes the AMP robot that we plan to use in Salinas. So we're really excited to kind of refine this model that we have right here on the screen and have the latest and greatest for Salinas. Okay, so these are a few photos of the Johnson Canyon facility. We've kind of got an overview shot. And then also in the top corner is some compost on the existing ASP pad. You can kind of see in this photo what Mandy was talking about, where it's there's dirt in between the two, in between the lateral concrete and pipes. Okay, next slide. So I'll go more kind of into the phases of construction in some of the subsequent slides. But above, we've got just kind of a video of our grinder that has already been procured and will be utilized in the permanent sort line design. All right. So just as kind of an overcap and review, Alice began operations July 1st of 2022. During the initial stages of operation, we were finalizing site design for the aeration pad, as well as vetting vendors. Originally, and I believe May or June of last year, when we gave a presentation to the board, we were planning to go down the EPC route for construction. However, we kind of found that this was not the best scope for this project. It was going to be heavy markup fees on things that we knew we didn't necessarily need. We had a good idea of what we wanted in partnership with Green Mountain Design and Ecoverse, and just decided instead to go a different route. Through our partners, Green Mountain Technologies, we were recommended Boston Pacific. Boston Pacific is a GC group out of California that has experience with these specialized aeration pads. Green Mountain Technologies did design the current pad that is at the facility, and we're working with them again to design the continuous concrete pad. So we decided to move forward with Boston Pacific December of this year, and then we're able to start construction in January. So we've been on ground for about a month now. And then in 2022, there were 23,008 tons sent to the facility. All right, next slide. So we've made the decision to split construction into two phases. Phase one is the aeration pad that we've talked about a little bit. Demolition is currently going on right now. The reason that we decided to split up the construction was to keep up with the ongoing day-to-day operations and be able to accept feedstock and keep it moving and processed, as well as for safety reasons. Having a large majority of the site under construction and as an operating compost facility can pose some issues for traffic flow. We wanted to make sure that everything was operating safely. Phase two, oh, sorry, if you could go back real quick. Phase 2 of construction is the construction of the sort line. We have partnered with Ecoverse in order to design and install this sort line. The image below is our initial design for the line. It will include a DOPSAT slow speed shredder, trommel screen, pick station, which will include room for manual picking as well as the AMP AI removal technology. We think this is really important in order to remove all of the contamination, especially as contamination is increasing as SB 1383 is ramping up. We want to make sure that the product that we are providing for our customers as well as the municipalities with their procurement requirements is of good quality and can be used with as little contamination as possible. The last step of the line is a DOPSAT AK640 grinder, which was shown on the previous slide. Okay, next slide. So this is kind of an overview of our phase 1 of construction. So we're currently in the demolition stage and working towards kind of the general grading. Another thing that we decided to do in order to keep up with the day-to-day operations of the site is demo one pad, build it, and then demo the next pad and build it so that we'll have enough processing area. This did add, a couple weeks to our overall timeline. We're anticipating that the project completion will be in end of June and fully operational with, cured end of commissioning in July. Once phase 1 construction ends and they're starting to demobilize, we will plan to start breaking ground on phase 2. On the next slide, we've put together a few of the risks that we see as possible. With the current market, I think everyone has experienced several different kinds of delays in lead time items. We, especially for the sort line, have had all parts ordered, and then we're just in constant communication with our vendors just to make sure that we're still, we're still all in agreement and we're expecting delivery when we need it. And so we're hoping that we're able to mitigate any downtimes that we may see. Additional risks include weather delays. In this phase 1, we have built-in weather delays. So hopefully, we'll be able to keep those to a minimum and not have to push anything further. And that is kind of an overview on phase 1. Any questions?
Thank you for your presentation. I will now open this up for board members if you have any questions on Atlas Organics presentation. I see Director Ben Jimenez, your hand is up. You're muted. Oh, Ben, you're muted.
I already said it all. I gotta think back now. Thank you, Eli, for the presentation and especially the video. It was very helpful to understand the whole process itself. One of the questions I have are a couple of them that you already answered regarding whether we had enough space for the processing area and how you guys are going to solve that and by moving and covering and reusing. And then the last one was the completion date, which would be July. So again, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I do have a question. In your construction, are you using prevailing wage by any chance?
We are. Yes, sir. That was, that's as stipulated in our contract, but also, what we wanted to do.
Thank you. And another question that I had was, you mentioned that there was high contamination at I believe it was the San Antonio location. And then you mentioned that was the type that you're going to be moving forward in our area. did you mean to say that you were going to be doing things differently, or what was the nexus between that comment about high contamination and the project moving forward with this?
Yeah, so typically we see with, any kind of municipal green cart, especially, newer programs, it's just, there tends to be a lot of high contamination just due to the fact that, residents may not have as much knowledge. It's an additional bin. Sometimes people just see it as, an additional place to put their trash. Especially with the city of San Antonio, they have cut back on their trash pickups. So in order to kind of incentivize people using the green bin for yard waste and food waste, and kind of consequent of that is just as people are still learning, and they want their trash taken regularly, contamination gets in. And so, I think there's a lot of unknowns just in terms of how contamination is going to be affected with the ramp up of 1383. And so, a small percentage of contamination can cause a lot of issues with a finished product. And so we've found just the payoff of using, the robots increases the amount of material that we can get out. And so that's kind of, especially with the line specifically is designed in order to get as much contamination out as possible.
Okay. And then what is your strategy to overcome that here in our area?
In terms of the site design and line design, or in terms of
the contamination levels?
Yeah, so this line here actually will have, we will have the robots. We also will have manual pickers. Two additional items that we'll have that the San Antonio line does not have, that will help increase as well, is wind sifters. These will be kind of on that more front end after the shredder. These will help get out the film plastic before going to the robot. Another part of the design is the shredder helps with size reduction without breaking up a lot of the contamination into small pieces, which lets people and also the robot pick them easier. Once something is that's a big part of our strategy, is try to get as much contamination out on the front end, because once it goes through a grinder, once it goes through the compost site, or once it goes through the composting process, a lot of that trash can be broken down, which creates an issue of, it's a lot more difficult to get those small pieces of trash out of the product. Then on the backside, on the finished product side, we will also have wind sifters on our finished product trommel that will help to get any of that last remaining, film plastic, small pieces, small debris out of the product.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I see Director Church's hand is up, and I'll go to you next.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, I'm relatively new here to this board, so I'm probably going to ask you some questions that have already been dealt with, as I just want to understand the process and what you're going on here. I have particular interest here. I actually for about 15 or 20 years actually had a composting permit in this county, so I know how the process works. And onto it, what's the quantity that's going to be handled on an annual basis down there?
So, and this, I can probably get some help from Brian and Mandy. So the site is permitted for 75,000 tons. I think the historicals are, more around the 50,000 tons per year.
We are permitted for 50,000 tons.
Okay.
We're limited by that by our air permit.
Okay.
No, we're permitted for 75,000.
Oh, I'm sorry. We are permitted for 75,000. I apologize. We are historically around the 50,000 per ton year mark.
So tonnage is always a difficult thing to measure when you're dealing with compost, because obviously quite a bit of water needs to be added into it. Are we talking and that when it's sold by the ton, one way to increase profits is actually to put water in, because it's relatively cheap that way. So I guess what I'm asking then is this the finished the unfinished product that before when you bring it in and you grind it up, is that when you're measuring it at 75,000 tons or 50,000 tons or whatever it is?
Correct.
Okay, right, thank you.
Just to
And-
clarify too.
We do
Oh.
sell by the yard for that exact reason.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Leslie.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's that's what I was hoping so, because I know when I was out at the Monterey Regional Waste Management District, you know, they would sell stuff by the ton, and so if it rained, they always got a few dollars more out of it. So this is always a little fairer to the public.
Yes, for clarification, we do always take the tonnage, we take the weight, but our pricing structure is based on a per yard cost. And so I know procurement responsibility is communicated in tons. And so we are consistently taking weights to make sure that we are balancing that out. But the price point is by yards.
Okay, thank you. And how much a finished product is anticipated every year then from this?
Leslie, I don't know if you know off the top of your head. I can pull that real quick.
Yes, if you have it in front of you, I think, you know, Mandy, we're expecting around 45 to 50,000 tons per year inbound, which basically, you know, rough math would put it around 25,000. And again, you know, this is, you know, the first year we're taking this material and processing, but just to give you an idea, around 25,000 yards is what I would assume.
Sure. So is that material, after it's been composted, is it being screened at that point afterwards, or is it being sold as more of a coarse product?
So both, but it primarily will be screened with a trommel screen on the back end, and we typically screen to a 3/8 inch. This is a general purpose particle size for finished compost. We do at other facilities use a smaller screen size for a finer product, specifically our striker product, which is made for golf courses. So we do have flexibility in the size of the particle, but we typically, our general choice is a 3/8 inch.
And so the overs that you are screening out, will that material be recomposted back in? Or will the material because that tends to pick up a lot of plastic and other trash that's left over into there, will that be separated again before it goes back in for composting?
Yes. So, yes. So as Eli was explaining, we do a lot on the front end to remove as many contaminants as possible. We have actually an amazing team on site that currently, without all the technology that Eli laid out for you, is hand picking and managing by sight, by visual, sorry. And so we do as much as we can on the front end so that the overs product that you're asking about can be reintroduced, but it could also potentially be utilized as a more coarser application of organic matter.
And will all this material be sold on site at Johnson Canyon, or will some of it be hauled out, or how are you planning on selling it?
It will be sold from the facility, yes.
Okay.
You know, there is a possibility, a high possibility that we would be a supplier, a wholesale supplier to like a landscape retail yard. So, you know, in that instance, the landscape retail yard would be the one selling it to the public. But yes, all of the initial sale will come from the facility.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Church, for your questions. Director Lopez, I see your hand is up.
Thank you. Just a quick question. At the end of the day, do we have any expectation or estimate of what it's going to cost a typical customer who walks in off the street or drives in with a pickup to buy a yard?
Yeah, absolutely. So a small scale, so with our pricing, we try to have a range. So a small scale, just pickup truck, it'll be $30 a yard.
Great, thank you.
Yes, and then as the quantity and loyalty of a customer increases over time, or in terms of their purchase, that price point becomes more of a wholesale price. But to the public, small scale, it will be that.
Thank you. Director Silva.
Thank you, President Rocha. I have one quick question, and that is, how soon will we be able to utilize the compostable bags that we can put our food waste in? I know we're not allowed to do that yet, but how soon will we be able to use those compostable bags?
You are correct. So the intricacies of those bags, the challenge is if we would like to sell our material into the organic agriculture market, we are not allowed to have those bags as a part of our feedstock. So knowing the location of the facility and the beautiful agricultural land you have, we made the very tough decision. I know it is a struggle for the waste generator and for separation purposes, but at this point, we are not going to be taking the certified compostable liners because that disqualifies us for providing and selling into an organic farming operation.
Sorry, Liz.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Really, really doing everything we can to advocate and come up with other alternatives. But at this point, the way that the OMRI certification and the California Organic certification works, it is not an approved feedstock.
Thank you for your comment.
Yes.
All righty, thank you. Are there any other director questions? Seeing none, I will move this on to public comment. This is now the opportunity to comment on this item. Seeing no public comment, I'll bring it back to the board for, yes, Mandy?
Oh, I just wanted to also put out there, because I know, and sometimes we have these presentations, and I know we have new board members, even for our existing board members, that a lot of the things of what we're talking about conceptually can be kind of difficult to grasp. So again, I'd like to offer up a tour to our facility, even if it's under construction, that's okay. You can see that part of it and kind of get a feel for the space and the area that we're talking about and the material that we're talking about. I know for me, I'm a visual learner. So again, I'd just like to extend that offer. If you are interested in attending a tour, please reach out to Erica or myself or Patrick. We can schedule something, even if it's a one-on-one tour. Happy to meet you out there and make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So I'll bring it back to the board now for any final comments on this. And if there are no final comments, we'll deem this report received, and there is no required action. It's for information only. All righty, moving on, we're going to go to our consideration items. We have requests for the fiscal year 2023-2024 preliminary budget direction, and we'll receive a report from Ray Hendricks, our finance and administration manager.
Good evening, and a lot of this is review, so if I start going too fast, feel free to stop me. I actually have I'm working off actual computer screen, so Patrick, you could just wave your hands at me or something, and I'll slow down. First slide, please. Okay, so just to review, this is the assumptions is this is a status quo budget. We have no changes in operation this coming fiscal year. All of the large changes have been in this past year. Sun Street Transfer Station is closed, and we've relocated our HHW and recycling area to a leased portion of Madison Lane. And then we did start our new contract with Atlas. We just provided their presentation. So this is status quo. It's just continuing the services that we have this year. Next slide. Just a reminder of our debt service schedule. We did refinance about a year ago. And next year will be year 2 of our principal payments. Our total debt service of 3.1 million with the final payment due on August 1st of 2030. So 8 more years after this. Next slide. Our CIP and post-closure budget is not changing overall, 3.8 million year over year. The only change in the CIP budget is since we do have Atlas currently constructing the new permanent compost facility, we are diverting 200,000 that was allocated to organics to Johnson Canyon environmental controls to our landfill gas monitoring. We're seeing a potential of having to increase the capacity of the flare at that site, so we want to start building up the budget, the reserves for that expenditure. Next slide. Okay, we are in the budget asking for 2 additional staffing allocations. Diversion system maintenance worker, fully loaded cost to salary and benefits of 113,000, which will be funded from overtime reductions. The diversion system maintenance worker would be assigned to the C&D program. It's a more appropriate position for that program. This is a new position that was just created in the last 6 months. So when we set up the program originally, we had a full operator driver. Getting this position will allow us to reassign the operator driver that's in the C&D program to help fill in at Madison Lane and Johnson, as well as Johnson Canyon alone as needed. So it allows us to transfer that higher position. And this would be paid just from a reduction of overtime from being able to reassign that other driver position. And we're also looking for a solid waste technician 1, fully loaded of 142,000. And this would be funded from a reduction of cost of contract services. We're looking to assign some landfill gas monitoring. We've been having some issues with some surface monitoring at the landfill. And having a person on site dedicated to this allows us to better react to ensure that we're in compliance with our air board requirements. But like I said, both of these are cost neutral. So if getting the positions, we'll have savings somewhere else to fund these. Next slide, please. Okay, so just a review of payroll increases. So this coming July 1, where staff is scheduled for 4% COLA, so that's an additional $252,000. Medical premiums, we're expecting an increase by 150,000. And then workers' comp, merit increases, and CalPERS increases at about 50,000 each. So total payroll increases are just shy of 550,000. Am I going too fast? Not seeing any eyes, so okay, I'll keep going.
Good.
Next slide. All right, so the total budget increases. So as I just mentioned, payroll increases, the net just under 550,000. Atlas is scheduled for a CPI increase July 1st on their contract, which is an estimated $51,000 extra. Budgeting an extra 45,000 for insurance and 40,000 for gas and electricity, mainly at the Johnson Canyon landfill. As I mentioned, those landfill gas are running at higher capacity than we originally anticipated. So our PG&E costs are have gone up significantly at the site. And then state regional fees, 32,000. So total operating increase is 723. So this is what we need to fund. In addition, we used one-time funds to fund this year's increase in workers' comp and insurance at 80,000. So the total operating increases are about 800,000. We did use one-time funds to fund organics processing this past year. The contract has 2 rates, a rate for having water on site, which is what the budget was built on. Unfortunately, we were unable to get water on site. So we used one-time funds to fund the delta for that. We're anticipating having water on site for the next fiscal year so that funding won't be needed. And then we use one-time funds to run SunStreet a month and a half longer than we thought we would. We did not have operating accessory in the budget when it was approved and written, and we did run it for till mid-August. So the net increase in the budget is 310,000, but as I mentioned, some of that was funded through one-time fees. Next slide. So in order to fund those increases, and this is option 3, which is the way I wrote the initial budget, but we do have another option that I'll be presenting the impacts towards the end. So AB 939 fee increase of 470,000. And the fortunate with the Fed going up is we are seeing increases in our investment earnings. So we're increasing our budget for an extra $200,000. With the purchase of the administration office, we have a tenant paying just shy of $100,000 in rent, which will include in a budget, and then a tipping fee increase to the green waste to pay for the CPI that's due Atlas would be $56,000 in additional revenue. So the total revenue increase is $806,000. Okay, so just so you can see the budget summary, we're looking at 24,571,000 in operating revenues. Operating expenditures of 17,600,000. Set aside for the new cell, we do set aside $5 for every ton that comes into the landfill to help for future landfill, to pay for future landfill expansion. So the budgeted tonnage is 209,000 next year. That's a 1,045,000, 3.1 million debt service, a little over $1 million for post closure at Crazy Horse, Malone and Lewis Road landfills, and then the CIP budget that I reviewed earlier at 1.7 million. So the balance used for reserves is 16,000, and then option 4, which is the other option, is $1,500 difference. So it's to our budget, it doesn't really have an impact. Next slide, please. So the key rate adjustments. Green waste, wood waste, as I mentioned, this is just a pass through of the CPI expected for Atlas of $1.25. So from $57 a ton to $58.25 per ton. Transportation surcharge. So this is that Malone Road transfer station of $1 increase. So this is our South County and King City customers. And this is just to keep up with cost at the site. And next slide, please. So at the January meeting, I presented 4 options. Board eliminated options 1 and 2. So the 2 options that we're looking at is to apply the increase fully in AB 939, so $470,000, or option 4, which would fully fund AB 939 services, a little over $1 million. And it would allow us for the next year to lower our solid waste tipping fee for next year to $62. The benefit of option 4 is in times of declining tonnage, having a portion of our revenue being fixed helps to minimize the impact of reduced solid waste. So AB 939 fees is about a quarter of the solid waste revenue. So having the fixed stream could be beneficial, and then lowering the solid waste tipping fee hopefully could help persuade our current residents to keep the trash in system. We're not necessarily looking to attract trash from outside the system, but there could be some benefits. We have been for the past several years applying increases to AB 939, which is option 3, which is why I wrote the budget that way. Next slide, please. So this is the new information that the board asked me to come back with. So just a reminder, AB 939 fees are reallocated by percentage based on the prior 3 years tonnage. As you can see, Tri-City tonnage did increase slightly when compared to the prior year, along with the city of Salinas. And Monterey County decreased slightly, and King City decreased very slightly, although it does round off to 5.2%. So these are the percentages used to allocate AB 939 from last year. Next slide, please. Okay, so the rate impact. So option 3, that's 470,000 increase. So the transportation surcharge, which applies only to the county and King City, at 11 cents for the typical customer. Organic rate increase, and this just has to do more with the way it's applied. Republic and Tri-Cities applies it only to the residential customers, and Waste Management has a blended rate that gets applied to everyone. So for Salinas and Tri-Cities, the organics increases 5 cents to the residential customer, 2 cents for the Waste Management with County and King City. The AB 939 fees, 18 cents for the typical Salinas customer, 35 cents for the typical Tri-Cities customer, at 30 cents for the county and 23 cents for the county. So the total impact, which is on the screen, somewhere between 23 cents and 43 cents, depending on the jurisdiction. And then for the commercial customers, we're looking at increases between $1 and $2.30, depending on the jurisdiction, and the 3-yard once a week customer, between $3 and $6. So these are just the impacts of these increases, do not include the anticipated hauler increases or franchise fees that go back to the jurisdictions. So as you can see, an increase of about 0.7% to 1.2%. So option 4. Please, next slide. So option 4, if we lower the tipping fee, obviously there is that saving gets passed on to the customer with a slightly higher increase for AB 939. Still looking at between 26 cents and 53 cents, depending on the jurisdiction for the typical residential customer. And for the 1-yard customer, between $1.30 and $2.80, and the 3-yard customer between $3 and $8, depending on your jurisdiction. Next slide. So just to make it easier, this is comparing the option 3 and option 4. So for the residential customers in Salinas, it would be 3 cents higher for option 4. Tri-Cities, it'd be 13 cents higher for option 4, and for county, option 4 is actually cheaper. Option 3 is 4 cents more in King City. And then for the 1-yard customers, the difference is between 23 and 75 cents. And then the 3-yard customers, from a savings of 25 cents to 226. So what I need from the board is which option they would like me to write the final budget. The executive committee did recommend option 3, but I'll bring back whichever option the board directs me to, and I just need direction to bring back the rate hearing and the budget, and which at the March meetings, and direction as to which option to use to finalize the budget. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Board, we have option 3 and option 4 before us, and so I'll open it up to the board for questions at this time. Director Cullen, I see your hand is up. You have the floor.
Thank you. Just wanted to see, since executive committee is recommending option 3, just wanted to see President Rocha or if someone else from the executive committee could elaborate on that recommendation.
Yes, I'll go ahead and comment on that. We wanted to make sure that we were being as cognizant of following through with the board direction as possible. And there seemed to be, a lot more interest in option 3, but also in looking at the numbers, it seemed like that was less of a hit on our constituents. And so that was at least on what went into my decision-making process. And I think I could speak for both of us in saying that, but I want to give Director Jimenez the opportunity to comment on that as well.
Yes, thank you, President. Exactly. That same thing for us. It was an issue that it'd be nice to be able to pay down quicker. However, being cognizant of the fact of the present situation coming out of COVID and all this other issues with employment and those type of things, is that we wanted to be respectful of that and keep the costs down, but yet still achieving the ultimate goal of paying down. So that's where options 3 of the 2 became the choice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from directors? Seeing no other hands up, I'm going to move this on to public comment and see if there's any members of the public wishing to comment on this item, preliminary budget direction. Seeing no members of the public, I'll bring it back to the board for final comments and for direction on this item. Director Church.
Yes, when I look at the numbers, you say that option 3 is less of a hit on customers, but that seems to be primarily, you mean, for urban customers. It looks more like for rural, it's kind of the opposite. Or am I reading this wrong?
Rosie, can you bring up leave it on the last slide for me, please? Yes, that is correct. But the one thing I will say is that the swing is larger for Tri-Cities going with option 4, where for the rest of the cities we're only looking at a 3 or 4 cents difference, which is I'm sure why Director Jimenez prefers option 3 versus 4, because of the swing to his constituents is much larger going in that direction. But yes, for the cities, it is a slightly bigger hit going with option 4, and for the county and King City, it's a slightly bigger hit staying in option 3.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that question, Director. It is an important distinction to make. Any other board members? As I mentioned, this is an action item, so we would need a motion to move this item forward.
Well, I'll move to go with option 3.
Silva will second that motion.
Thank you. So it's been properly moved and seconded, and we've gone out for public comment already. I'm going to do one last round and see if there's any board member comments. Seeing none, we'll ask for a roll call vote.
Director Collin,
Aye.
Director Lopez,
Aye.
Director Sandoval,
Aye.
Director Silva,
Aye.
Director Antoine,
Aye.
Alternate Vice President Church,
Aye.
Vice President Jimenez.
Yes.
Check.
Yes. Okay, thank you. It's been unanimously approved. We will now move on to consideration item number 12, authorization to release a request for interest for advanced organics recovery technology development. We will receive a report from Patrick Matthews, our general manager.
Thank you, Board. So this is an interesting item for, I think, especially some of the newer board members. I know some of you have seen this already, but I think this is the perfect opportunity for us to bring this forward again for discussion. So if you could move to the next slide, please, Rosie. So our mission, vision, values, and our goals, have been around actually for a fairly long time, probably, I want to say 13, 14 years. And one of the important things that this agency started on very early on in the early 2000s was to really focus on trying to find other ways to manage garbage instead of putting it in landfills. Those of you that have been around and understand landfills, they are a very, very long-term liability for the community. We will be caring for these landfills for decades, costing us millions of dollars. And so the board recognized that in its very early years and really started to focus in on new technologies. Next slide, please. So as you can see, this is just a pictorial of what is in our current waste stream. And the reality is that around 50 to 60% of what still goes in the landfill is organic in nature. It is either food waste, because people aren't always going to recycle their food waste. And I think we heard tonight a little discussion around some of the constraints that people feel about, having messy carts and smelly material that eventually leaves a mess in your green waste cart. And instead, they still continue to throw it away. And there's food that's embedded in things that we just can't recover. So along with that is paper. So these two things really make up the majority of our food waste or MSW that's going into the landfill. So the authorities really in a good position because of our history of looking at these types of technologies to really start to move this forward again. So next slide, please. So we're going to talk very quickly about 4 different technologies. Most of these we have had some involvement in terms of research and development or advanced testing of some of these technologies when they were more in their infancy. And a lot of these are now new, and some of these are actually new technologies that are now coming forward. And all of these are focused around recovering organic materials that's still in the mixed waste stream. And on top of adding capacity to the landfill and extending its life, these types of projects also produce energy. The typical output is energy or recyclable products. So they have really a double benefit for the authority by making our landfill last longer and reducing our long-term costs for infrastructure. So we have three or four things we're talking about tonight. Pre-processing, which is how do we get this stuff out of the garbage? Wet anaerobic digestion. Anaerobic digestion is really the process that happens inside our bodies as well. Organic material is eaten up and decomposed by anaerobic bacteria, which in turn produce methane. And methane can be captured and reutilized for energy purposes and other activities. So there's 2 types of anaerobic digesters. There's the kind that's it's liquid. There's a lot of organics in a liquid form. You see these digesters very commonly or often in wastewater treatment plants or in industrial treatment processes for wastewaters. High solids anaerobic digestion, same thing. Wastewater treatment plants, very common technology for digesting the sludge that comes out of wastewater treatment, and again, converting it into methane and leaving a nutrient-rich byproduct at the end that can have other applications in agriculture. And then finally, autoclaving, which I will go over at the very end. We have a very extensive history with this, having hosted a pilot facility that went through well over a decade of R&D work with the USDA under various grants, and still consider this to be probably the premier technology. Unfortunately, we have not yet been able to bring this forward to a commercial scale with the vendor that brought it to us the first time, but there are now new vendors doing that same technology that are actively operating facilities in the market now. So we've seen that technology mature in the last decade, and we think there's definitely some opportunities to relook at that again. Next slide, please. So some of this information came out of the last round of SB 1383 studies. That's the Organics Reduction Act, or the Short-Lived Climate Pollutant Reduction Act, as it's actually called, which is designed to remove organics to the highest extent possible from landfills and reduce the production of methane that does come out of landfills. And while we all have systems in place to capture that methane, because a landfill is actually an anaerobic digester. There's no oxygen present. The bacteria that we have in our guts, the same kind of bacteria exist in the landfill and eventually begin to break down organic materials and produce methane. But it's difficult to capture it 100%. And landfills in California have been identified as one of the more significant methane generators. Despite all the regulatory control and systems we have in place, it's not perfect. And so one of the state's driving motives here was really to stop putting organics in landfills. So these are a lot of the companies involved in pre-processing. Again, there's a couple of different types. There's autoclaves, which really in essence cook the garbage at low pressure with steam. That releases those organics. They can be captured in the backside through different processes. The other type is really what I would refer to simply as a garlic press. They're giant industrial systems that take small chunks of garbage into them. They press them at a very, very high pressure. That releases all the organics in a wet slurry format, very similar to what we see in our agricultural depackaging system. And so these are just a handful of companies that came out of the second phase of our 1383 study that SCS engineers did for us. The first phase was they actually developed plans for each of you as our member agencies to implement and guide you through compliance at the jurisdictional level with all those requirements to recover organics, because everybody has a responsibility under that law. It's not just the authority, but it's the individual jurisdictions and businesses as well. So everybody has a piece of that regulatory framework. Next slide, please. Again, autoclaving. We have 3 companies right now that we have spoken with or received information from that are now using autoclaving for pre-processing. And those are all companies that we assume will be interested in moving forward with some kind of a selection process if we decide to do that going forward. Next slide. High solids, again, anaerobic digestion. Again, some of the outputs from these pre-processing technologies and even the autoclave are very high in solids. Need a slightly different anaerobic digester, little different configuration to be able to convert more solid materials into methane. So again, these are just some of those companies that are working in that space right now. Next slide. And the same with wet anaerobic digestion. Again, some of these technologies, their output is more of a liquid, and the technology to actually convert that organic laden liquid into methane, just a slight variation from the solids digesters. Next slide, please. So previous technology efforts. So this is where I think we differ from a lot of our other agencies in this space, is that the agencies actually really opened our doors up to new technologies and offered up the authority as a platform for testing new technologies, because that was born into our genes in the very early years of our formation. And one of the early ones was, again, an autoclave technology that was designed around recovering both organic materials and paper fiber. The original developer up there was a company called CR3, sold their technology to a company called Global Organics Energy, or GOE. And both of those companies were working hand in hand with the USDA, who was a big proponent and continues to be a big proponent for this technology. The original proposal that we had received from GOE and CR3, their predecessor, was, again, autoclave fiber separator. We have a pilot unit that still sits at the Crazy Horse landfill that was the centerpiece of all this research and development work. The GOE came in and added another layer to this and said, once we separate the fiber, because what really comes out of an autoclave when you cook garbage with steam is small pellets of paper that are saturated with organic material that was cooked out of the embedded organics in the waste stream. And so you have fiber and organics, and they come out and very easy to separate with a screen, and you have a feedstock that can be used for a lot of different things. The USDA even developed their own technology for digesting that specific waste stream coming out of a digester. And it was proven, again, we hosted that digester system up at the Crazy Horse landfill. That digester system actually proved out to be a much higher generation of methane per ton of material than a conventional digester. And they have remained interested in possibly siting one of those units and helping to fund it even at an authority or other facility that's willing to host it. A few years later, the authority formed a conversion technology committee as we were looking at either building a new landfill or expanding Johnson Canyon. This was in the mid-2000s. The output of that was just about the time I started with the agency. They had put out an RFP just before I came here. And it was really to look at who's out there in the conversion technology arena that can take our garbage and do something at a much higher level with it. And so primarily they were looking at thermal technologies as well as digestion technologies, very similar to the ones we just talked about. We had a company from Plasco that and the Conversion Technology Commission was actually made of 3 board members and staff and consultants. And that was our commission that met on a regular basis, very similar to our EC. It was a board approved, appointed commission under the Brown Act, and held public meetings and the like. So they ended up landing on what was called a plasma arc gasifier from a small company up in Canada that had built their first commercial facility in Ottawa. Unfortunately, the project never got off the ground. There was a lot of unfortunate misinformation and public outcry over it, thinking it was going to be some kind of a Chernobyl type facility. And it was unfortunate. We never got to CEQA. We were about to start CEQA, and the board chose to table that project and move forward with other ventures. So next up comes the landfill gas to energy. That project is in operation. We selected a company called Amoresco, who actually has a number of operations in California, including Santa Cruz County. And they came forward and were selected through an RFP process to build our first landfill gas to energy project. So we currently have a 1.5 megawatt landfill gas generator at Johnson Canyon that serves the needs for roughly 1,200 to 1,500 homes, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Now, they're not wired up to your house, but they're putting that energy out onto the grid, and it's displacing conventional energy in lieu of using landfill gas energy. Next slide, please. So a little background again. Here's our steam autoclave. This is what an autoclave looks like. This is a small scale unit. It only does 2 tons per batch. The commercialized units that we would be talking about with the prior development effort, as well as the current companies, they're somewhere between 20 and 30 tons per batch, and they basically treat batches in this rotating unit that looks really just like the back of a cement mixer. You go inside, there's veins, and it rotates. The outside of this unit is wrapped in a jacket of circulating oil that is heated, that helps maintain the heat inside, and then steam is also injected. As you can see on the left-hand side, that's a steam injector that also injects steam into the unit as it rotates, and that creates the reaction that in essence cooks out or breaks down the organic material inside. And it also separates the paper from anything it might be glued to. So if you have paper glued to something, the paper breaks apart. The analogy is it's like a piece of paper you left in your pants pocket and it went into the washing machine. When it comes out, it's a bunch of little pills, and that's exactly what this unit does. Very simplistic, but it actually can recover a very huge amount of material in a very efficient way. Next slide, please. So here's a look inside an autoclave after it's been loaded, but before it's been turned on. Next slide. And here's that autoclave, that same load of material after it's gone through the heating and steam treatment. Again, this isn't burning. This is just over the boiling point of water. It's cooked at around 260, 270 degrees. You know, not using any heat, any flames or anything like that, but it does have this effect of breaking down the material. And you'll see this brown material here in just a moment. Next slide. There we go. This is that brown material, and in the next slide after this, there's another picture of it, what it looks like when it comes out, but it's basically looks like this. This is actually the product after it's been washed. So this sort of granular paper fiber that's soaked in organics goes through a conventional paper washing system that you would find at any recycled paper plant. And the output is this material, and it doesn't look real pretty, but this material is worth $200 a ton. And so in a system like this, that's a fairly high price for a finished product. This is manufacturing ready, goes right into the paper plant and can be turned back into brown paper stock, which is the bread and butter for the Salinas Valley, because that's the type of material that's used to make all the packaging we use in our agricultural industry. So this technology like this has the potential to be a true closed loop circular system. And within our jurisdiction, that's even more prevalent because we have such a high demand for brown paper stock to handle agricultural packaging. Next slide. So we had, with the help of the Monterey County Business Council, they brought in a company called Solution Mountain, and they conducted a jobs and economic benefits analysis. And this again was for the GOE project. So it just gives you a general sense of what a project like this could do at full scale if it were to be constructed, built, and funded in the Salinas Valley. So fairly substantial outputs for projects like this. Next slide, please. And of course, we went over some of the environmental benefits: conserves landfill space. SB 1383, it addresses greenhouse gas reduction at probably a higher level than anybody's doing right now if we were to do something like this. It's energy self-sufficient because when you wash the dirty paper fiber that comes out of this autoclave, you pull out the organics, right? That's the organics that are been soaked up by these little pills of paper. That creates a dirty wastewater called brown liquor that can go through wet anaerobic digestion and actually create methane that can be used to co-generate electricity to run the plant. So the plant can actually, and the engineers for GOE had actually demonstrated that this plant could actually produce more energy than the plant needed, meaning that it would be completely energy self-sufficient. Again, this is all on paper, didn't go forward, but it did demonstrate through a lot of engineering analysis that this project had some incredible potential. Green energy, of course, that's green energy. Excess energy could be sold. That would be considered green energy. The feedstock pulp, this all originates in the valley, and the finished product. They were lining up some of the paper manufacturers in the East Bay and South Bay, and that were actually willing to sign letters of intent to buy all that finished product. And those are the very companies that are making the brown feedstock that comes down to the Salinas Valley to the Weyerhaeusers and the Rock Tens, who are making a lot of the packaging products for specifically for the ag industry. So really neat story. Unfortunate that the company GOE just was not able to secure all the funding they needed to finance the project. But there's now other vendors out there that certainly may have this capability. Next slide, please. So again, we have a number of great organics recovery projects. We've talked about all these. I won't go over them in length, but we have a depackaging system. We can actually take organics out of packaged products like bag lettuce and plastic clam shells that have berries in them, things like that. Those can all be depackaged, and now we have this sort of, we call it our green slurry that currently goes in with the Atlas operation, but could also be used to create electricity with an anaerobic digestion system. We have the curbside commercial food waste collection work that's going on and expanding under 1383. We have another project you'll hear a little bit more about in the next month or two, and that is our landfill gas operator, Amoresco, and their partner, Machado and Sons, are interested in taking all the excess landfill gas we have, which is fairly substantial, because you can't really make electricity anymore. The incentives and the cost of electricity, it's non-competitive. So we got the first one in when the prices were still good and they could lock in a really good price on the contracts. They're unfortunately not not building new landfill gas to energy projects any longer. But there is a renewed interest in creating renewable natural gas at pipeline quality, meaning we collect the methane, we clean it up, and we actually can re-inject it into PG&E pipelines. Lots of incentives, lots of grant and funding out there to do this. And so Amoresco has excess landfill gas. Machado is experienced in building agricultural digesters in the Central Valley, brought them in to say, look at Machado actually wants to take the clean produce waste from the packing sheds like Taylor's, right? The broccoli stem ends, the leaves on the outside of the artichoke, the stuff that comes off of the processing lines. That's clean material without anything in it. Great feedstock to make methane with. And the byproduct that's left over potentially has value also in other agricultural activities. And by doing that, they're producing biogas. Amoresco has a lot of excess landfill gas. They combine those two gas streams. They clean that gas up. They strip out the carbon dioxide because landfill gas is only about 50% methane. It's a medium strength gas. But when they strip all the CO2 out, it becomes pipeline quality, 99+% methane. And so by bringing in this partner, creating these two potential biogas streams, bringing them together and cleaning them up, the economy of scale makes this project very viable. And then that gas would be pipelined down to a connection point in Gonzales and re-injected into the PG&E pipeline, and potentially could be taken as an offshoot. Some of it could be sent over to the city's industrial park and their cogeneration microgrid system. When they have the capacity to take that, they could actually take some of that biogas as well and use that for their microgrid. Next slide, please. So what we're asking for tonight is the next step in our process. Again, SCS identified a lot of these companies for us in the second phase of their 1383 planning work for us. What we want to do now is actually go out to these companies and ask them to provide what we refer to as a request for interest, or some may refer to it as a request for information. Well, we call it a request for information or interest. And really, it's not a formal RFP yet. It's the first step where we ask companies to present us with information on the maturity of their technology, their financing capabilities, their growth. We help identify facilities that we may want to go and visit and look at to see the technologies in working order. And it gives us an ability to hopefully weed this list that could be many, many companies, weed it down to the ones we think are most viable, the ones that have the best fit for our needs. And at that point, if we're satisfied that we want to take the next step, then we go out for an actual formal request for proposal, or we ask for bids and guarantees and other things, and take it to the next step. Very similar to what we did in 2007 to 2010 with the Conversion Technology Committee. But this time we're now really focused solely on organics recovery technologies and really eyeing in on what's in the waste stream that we still can get. So our request tonight is just to authorize release of a request for information. There's nothing, just not binding in any way to the board or to the authority. It's a very simple document and request some basic information so we can do a first level evaluation and determine which of these technologies we think would be worthy to take forward to a formal proposal.
Thank you, Patrick. Board members, I'd like to open this up for questions of the board. Director Cullen, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, and first off, Patrick, thank you for that overview. Certainly, with our history, there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of information there. One of the suggestions that comes to mind on this request for interest is it would be nice to have those companies address questions related to risk. So some categories of risk that come to mind that we've had to deal with in the past is like legislative risk, just asking them to address, given whatever type of technology or process that they're representing, is what do they see as legislative risk and how do they mitigate it? So I see like legislative risk, certainly economic risk, even things like local opposition risk. Those broad categories of risk that we've had to deal with in the past, and just have them address that within the RFI. I think it would be valuable information for the board to have as we get to milestones in this to make decisions.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say the local opposition risk, obviously we have some negative experience on that. I think part of that was that we were looking at thermal-based technologies that are actually becoming a little more commonplace. Not as much California, but other places. But here we're looking at stuff that's actually already existing in most communities. It actually has some environmental benefits for adjacent communities over just landfilling. So yeah, those are great questions. We can definitely fold those into the RFI.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cullen. I have a question. I do want to be supportive of new technology, but I also want to be very mindful about putting ourselves on an intentional path forward that really can make sure we're getting this done in a realistic time frame. So, Patrick, what do you think about limiting the RFI to projects that are already been proven to work and are up and running in California, because we do have our own set of rules with CEQA and other stuff that don't exist in other places. And so I think that would be I do want to cast a wide net, but I want to make sure I cast a realistic net, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's really the intent here. I mean, all these companies you saw on the screen, there are all companies that have operations, but some are more mature and some aren't. Some have future potential they haven't realized yet. So I think what this does, it helps us weed out those ones that really aren't really going to be mature enough for us to want to accept that risk. And of course, just as a general overview for the board, all these projects we've always entered into, they've always been projects where we're not really taking a huge financial risk, right? We're becoming the platform, we're providing the feedstock. There's things we can do, but not spending a lot of money on the actual technology. We're looking for others' ability to finance these things, take that financial risk. But we also want to address, as you're saying, the technology risk and make sure we're not jumping into things like we have in the past where we've tried to move down a pathway with something that's, it's viable, but maybe not as viable as it could have been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be my request, is for it to be limited to projects in California. That way we could just get going on it and it could be more timely. Director Sandoval, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. I was just listening to Patrick, your comment a little bit earlier about a lot of these technologies, haven't been in California. I was just a little unclear on that. Can you circle back to that? I didn't understand that.
Yeah, well, some of the vendors you saw on those screens have a presence in California. We've talked to some of the ones in California. Some of them are, I'll say this very candidly, at the risk of insulting my solid waste brethren, but the history in the United States has always been, when you want to do something advanced, you look on the other side of the pond at Europe, because they're typically 10 to 20 years in front of the US in new technology. So I always like to not underpin that, because we always end up doing the things that we're seeing in Europe, but we're always behind them 1 or 2 decades in terms of technology advancement. So that's just an interesting fact that exists. So there are some of these technologies are in California, some of the ones you saw on the screen, but some aren't. Some are in other states, maybe that have pushed the envelope a little earlier and they now have operating plants. But some of these may actually be European players that are either in the just getting into the US or wanting to get in the US. So that's where we have to really look at those and say, are we ready? Maybe, maybe not. But I agree. We do want to, we want to be able to see the ones that are operating in California for certain. But I would say that a wider net would not hurt us, because that's why we're doing an RFI first. This allows us to weed out the stuff we don't really want to consider.
Yeah, just for me, I mean, just because California does have this, special regulations and it seems to be more complicated. I would be in favor of somebody that's proven in California, or, I want to be innovative as well, but I also want to be realistic. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Sandoval. Vice President Jimenez, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thank you, President. Yeah, for myself, similar concerns like Director Clowen brought up, and also Sandoval. And I'm open to looking up on the RFI is to cast a little wider net to consider those from like Patrick said, across the pond, and see how they can fit into California's rules and restrictions and regulations to see if it's feasible. Right now, we're just looking for an RFI, so therefore making them consider California's restrictions and how they fit with us and what is out there. I mean, do we really know it, those changes that are out there, what other countries are doing, what other states are doing, and how they apply towards California? So I would be open to seeing that, how they fit in as recommended to California, and how they're going to mitigate those regulations as well. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Lopez, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to add my voice to the chorus calling for the broader net. When I think about some of the projects we've had here, I've been on both sides of the lobbying when it came down to some of those projects that didn't have community support. I've also been on the side of advanced technology and time to try something different. I take them project by project, and I think casting a wide net gives us the opportunity to really look at them through those different lenses that we all carry on behalf of our communities. I'll share that one of the things happening right now is a really big investment that I'm seeing in biochar. And biochar is a product that can come out of some of the products that we're currently perhaps seeing go offline at our facility, but long-term it is really a coral reef for carbon capture that could be added to a lot of our farmland. And we have people who are investing in really piloting that project. To be frank, they've already piloted it and they love their results. So they're bringing units to Monterey County to start producing here to minimize trucking and removing that pollution from the trucking side of their investment. And that's the type of thing I want to see us consider. And I think we might see in response to a broader net. And so for that reason, I want to see us keep going down that path and see who comes forward, and then we apply our lenses as we appropriately carry those on behalf of the communities that elected us to sit in these seats and see what would work. But thank you all for your input.
Thank you. Director Silva, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just like Mr. Cullen and Mr. Lopez, I've served on this board for quite a few years and have seen the different technologies that have been presented to us. I would like to ask that if we can get Technology 101, like a quick learn type of session for all of us, maybe on an afternoon or a Saturday for a couple of hours, just to kind of better explain what each of the processes can do. As Mr. Cullen said, our friends across the pond are so far advanced in the different technologies that I think it would behoove many of us to take a look at what they do, how they do it. And yes, California does have a lot of different environmental laws, but I think I had the opportunity to travel to a conference in Philadelphia with a person who used to work for the authority. And I got to learn a lot. So I think if it would be possible to set up some kind of a learning technology 101 for all these conversion technologies, because they have changed quite a bit over the last 10 or 15 years that I've served on this board. and I myself would like to see it. We hear about it, we see the slides and stuff, but I think that if you could see it in a deeper level, it would really be more helpful.
Sure. I think we could even come back and maybe just do a session with the board where we just focus on one technology, do a little deeper dive, get some videos and things in so you can see some of these things in action. Sure, we can absolutely do that.
Thank you. And I would also be in support of that technology 101 session. Director Sandoval, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I liked Director Jimenez's approach that with the wider net, we maybe get some feedback on how they would mitigate some of the technologies here in California, right? Definitely with the, more able to see more technologies, but being realistic and seeing, as you present those new technologies, is that something you can work in California, and how would you address some of those issues? So,
right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I share those same, I think that's a really good path to pursue, the cast a wide net, but in that RFI, find an opportunity to address the manner in which they're going to, navigate the California environmental laws that exist. That way we could have a realistic approach to addressing this from the beginning. Thank you. I see our legal counsel's hand is up.
Thank you, President Rocha. I was just going to add a little clarification regarding CEQA and some of the environmental laws. Typically, even if a project is already approved in California, that doesn't guarantee that it can be duplicated in another area of California. So each of the projects will be vetted for CEQA and environmental compliance once we truly know the scope of the project and where it's going to be located. And so with that in mind, I would just add that so it may still be able to broaden the scope of what projects potentially can be looked at, because even if it's in Southern California, it may not be viable in the Salinas Valley.
That's great feedback. Are there any other directors that'd like to comment on this item? All righty, seeing no other hands up, I will move this to public comment. This is now an opportunity to comment on this item. Seeing no raised hands, I'll bring this back for board final discussion and direction. If there are any members of the board that'd like to give any comments and direction.
Mr. Mayor, this is Silva. I move that we move this forward to the RFI.
Thank you. And you also gave me a promotion, but thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Director Sandoval, I see your hand is up.
Yeah. I would second that. Just with, it seems like the consensus is that, we try to include something that addresses, technology coming to California, as mentioned by Director Jimenez.
Thank you. Director Silva, would you be amenable to that friendly amendment?
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a first from Director Silva and a second from Director Sandoval. Are there any other board members like to comment on this item? Seeing no other hands up, it's been properly moved and seconded, and I'll call for a roll call vote.
Director Collin,
Aye.
Director Lopez,
Aye.
Director Sandoval,
Aye.
Director Silva,
Aye.
Director Antolon,
Aye.
Alternate Vice President Church,
Aye.
Vice President Jimenez,
Aye.
President Rocha.
Yes. All righty. Thank you. We've closed that item, and now we'll move on to future agenda items. Agenda items view ahead schedule.
All right. Make this quick. So we have a few items coming back in consent like normal, most of the normal items. Hopefully we will have the water delivery agreement, which will address the longstanding need to increase our water availability at Johnson Canyon. So we're hopeful that will be ready for March. And of course, you have the public hearing for the upcoming rate schedule for next year, as well as approval of the final budget. That allows us to give all of our haulers certainty with what our rates will be come July 1st, and allows them to prepare their rate review packets for each of the jurisdictions in April and so forth. Have everything in place for July 1. We'll also be giving an update on our public education center. It's coming along slowly. Mostly it's interior work that's taken some time. And with some of the work going on in the new office building, we've sort of stretched our staff thin between those two projects. So we hope to have a pretty substantial progress, and we can show the board where we're at with that project. And then an update on the regional franchise procurement work that we're doing right now with the 4 South Valley cities. So if there's anything the board would like to add to the agenda, modify or change, please let us know, and we'll work, I think at the request tonight from Director Silva, we'll work on putting together maybe some modules on technology where we can do sort of a focus presentation on just one technology at a time to sort of give you an idea of what they are, and definitely we'll consider all that as part of the RFI process as well. So you'll be all versed and ready to go and make decisions on these when we do come back with options and ideas to discuss.
Thank you. Any board members that would like to add anything to the future agenda items? Seeing none, I would support the addition of the technology information session. Thank you, Patrick. We'll close that item, and we do not have anything for closed session today. So I don't think that I have to speak to anything other than that, right? Okay, thank you. So moving on, we'll not have any closed session today, and at 7:47, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Night.